So the questions are mostly a bit basic because I had very little time to prepare. But adventure mode, that's the first question. What's the concept behind this? How does it compare to the campaign mode?
Right. Okay. So I think we had a couple of problems, and I said this when we did our panel yesterday, that in adventure mode or in the campaign mode, we have all of these random elements to it, but people have a clear goal, which is to kill Diablo at the end of Act 4 in whichever difficulty they're playing right now. So to do everything, all these little side dungeons and events and things, it didn't tend to be efficient for people to do that. They didn't find that rewarding, or it slowed down their goal of let's just get to Diablo or get to level 60. And so we knew that that's a valid thing that people want to do. We wanted to support that better, and we wanted variety to be the most rewarding way to play. So in adventure mode, the way that it compares with campaign, it takes all of the elements of campaign mode, all the events on the main story, the major fights, everything that's normal in all the acts that you've seen before. It takes the quest dialogues out of the way, so the main quest is just removed, but all the little side events and things remain, so that you can do all those. And then most importantly, it delivers them to you in a more varied way than campaign does. So campaign is there to tell that particular story. Adventure mode is to take advantage of all of those things and give you this tour, this variety, and to make sure that that's very rewarding. So it sort of takes all of our random elements and all the content we made, and it mixes them in new and interesting ways. Much more replayable.
About adventure mode again, bounties is part of that system. How will bounties play out in the end? What part is it? Is it a big part of the adventure mode? Is it just a gimmick? What can you say about this?
It's the main part.
Okay.
Bounties is the primary thing that you're doing in adventure mode. So you have all waypoints unlocked in all of the acts. You can go back and forth between the acts. By the way, at any time you can take that same character and go back into the campaign and play as part of the story. So both modes are available at all times for your player. So bounties, basically, they're a suggested thing to do. So we try to keep them super varied. So sometimes it'll ask you to do a boss run. Sometimes we'll be searching for something in a specific zone. Sometimes we'll add new monsters in. And they're always rewarded. This might change by the time we ship. They're always rewarded by getting a Nephilim Rift key, and that's the second major feature. And Nephilim Rifts are basically super random dungeons, and that's where we allow ourselves to break the rules. So it might not make any sense to have monsters from, Act 4 with monsters from Act 1 with zombies, but if that's fun, we do that in Nephilim Rifts because they're self-contained, so we can just go crazy there. We can have stuff that's just way over the top. Hey, here's a level with 100 treasure goblins, but you only have 5 minutes. Go crazy, right? Stuff like that happens. So that's sort of fun, and that's more gimmicky, but not in a bad way. Like that's just like you never know what craziness is going to happen in there. But bounties are just, they're taking you for a why. We take advantage of all the content. Everything we find fun has been made into a bounty. So as you go through, anything that was ever fun becomes something that you want to do instead of something that slows you down from getting to your goal of killing Diablo.
Okay. You mentioned Nephilim Rifts. I think they were announced at Gamescom. Back then they were called loot runs.
Right.
Loot runs, exactly. Has anything changed since Gamescom with the loot runs, or is it just a name change?
They've gotten a little bigger. We've added more stuff to them. So we added, basically we knew that we wanted to do the same thing I just described, which is take all the monsters, all the areas, and mix and match them in interesting ways. Now we've added cool buffs. The one that we talked about was an electrical one-shot buff. So you basically get this almost arcadey power-up thing. You get this power-up off these special Nephilim Rift shrines, and as you run through the area, everything just dies in front of you. It only lasts for 15 to 30 seconds, and it only works in the Nephilim Rift. So things like that, just to keep it varied. So it's always trying to, more than anything in Diablo ever, you never know what's going to come around the next corner, both good for you and bad for you. So we keep building on that system. We're very happy with how it's turning out, and now we're just doing anything we can think of.
Same question about the Crusader. Since Gamescom, were there any big changes? Is there anything in the mechanics that you have changed since then?
No, just more. Same thing. We finished off more of the skills, more of the runes, and we showed a bunch of those off as well. Steed Charge we unveiled as his movement skill, for example, and we were still working on that at Gamescom, or we would have showed it back then. Okay. Where he gets this celestial steed and can ride through things, and we show one of the runes where he hooks enemies. So as he rides through, all the enemies nearby get pulled behind him on a hook, and then when the Steed Charge stops, all the enemies are gathered around, and you can start slamming them.
Awesome. One topic that hasn't been touched here, I think, is what are the plans after the auction house is removed? Is there any discussion about alternative trading system? Is that a big discussion topic at the development team?
Yeah, we're still working on that. So I can tell you some of the things that we're talking about, and ultimately we're going to probably release a blog post to specifically address trading in the near future, in the next month or two. We'll go into great detail about that. The short version version is that I think that trading is a valid way to get items, so I don't want to cut that off completely. But if trading in the auction house, it took over everything, right? It was unbalanced. Most of the time, you should be getting items by playing the game and killing monsters, not just collecting gold to spend in the auction house, or not just playing the auction house as its own little mini game. So now that that's going away, we want to make sure that the economy remains very compelling. And a lot of the loot systems we've done, all the loot 2.0 stuff is really to do that, to make you playing the game not miss the auction house at all, not want to leave the game to do anything to get an item. And that's a big part of it. Trading wise, we'll probably have to bind on account just the top tier of items. And so far we're talking about, we'll try to keep trading as open as possible, but when you're sort of settling into those final items and the best items, we'd like you to find those yourselves, and we'd like to be way more generous to make sure that you do find those yourselves.
Okay. At one of the panels, we've seen a lot of new skills from different classes. One class that I think there was only one new skill was the witch doctor, and it was mentioned that the wish is to turn the witch doctor into a pet class. What's the struggle with this? What is blocking you from doing that?
Just at the higher difficulties, the pets weren't useful enough. So we didn't have to add new skills to do that. What we're going to do instead is just to give major increases in power, possibly the AI of the pets as well. So we weren't more specific because we hadn't finished that tuning pass yet, but we want to make a lot of the underused skills. I should back up. Those skills are used a lot as you're leveling up. Once you hit max level and you're trying to farm, for your more elite gear, people stop using that. And that's not the idea for the witch doctor. Ideally, pets should be valid at level 70 playing on the hardest difficulty, and that's what we're working towards.
Many people expected a ladder announcement here at BlizzCon maybe. Is that a topic at all in the development team? Is there anything similar to that planned, or can you tell us anything about
Yeah,
that?
it's just we like the idea of ladders. We didn't have anything to talk about yet, and I hope we will in the future, but we weren't Josh was vague on purpose because we don't want to make any promises. So nothing to say yet. But yeah, the team's aware of the value of ladders, and hopefully at some point.
It is a topic, you're just not ready to reveal any information yet.
Right, we can't guarantee it's going to make it into Reaper or anything like that, and or even that we can work out something that we want to do for sure. So we don't want to make the mistake of saying, yes, ladders are coming, because that's not true. And when we are sure, then we will tell people.
Legendaries are not only the rarest item in Reaper Souls, but it was also said that they are going to be the most powerful items now.
Right.
Is that like a new back to the roots concept that you have amongst the development team?
I think that was always intended, and I don't think we did a good enough job being thorough on designing those things and thinking about it. Essentially, a lot of the loot systems that we're doing now are to take the rough edges off of randomness. We had this example that if you had a hammer that could roll 1 to 100 strength, yes, in a game that's totally random, you could roll a 1 strength hammer. It's never going to be useful, right? So we're just narrowing those ranges so that it would roll 75 to 100 strength. So even the worst possible roll is still a decent item. We're doing a lot of stuff like that, especially on the primary stats, and that's true for legendaries and all items. So on the legendary end of things, on one hand, we're trying to give them these crazy powers that only they do in the game, and on the other hand, we're letting them roll more generously. We're doing them at different levels. You can start finding legendaries at low levels. You don't have to wait till 60 to get a specific legendary. You can get a level 20 version of it, a level 30 version of it, etc. So legendaries are bigger in the game. They're more powerful. They're still the rarest item, but we hope that when you find them, they're always going to be useful in some manner. One other thing that's I think a really good thing to do is that when you are doing that legendary game where you're getting early versions of it as you're leveling up, when you replace those, we don't want that to feel bad, so we're going to make legendaries salvage into something special that you can only use to upgrade other legendaries. So if you're getting rid of an old legendary shield for your Crusader and you've got a new one that's better, you can still get one last use out of that old one. You break it down and you give an instant bonus to that new shield you found, or to one of your other items. So even if you're fully decked out in legendary gear, finding ones that you don't need are still useful because you can upgrade the ones you already have.
Okay. What about other classes? We talked about the witch doctor. Are you happy with the general game mechanics of the other classes, or are there any discussions of changing any classes drastically?
Not drastically. There's definitely some changes, and we just finished at work, so we're still doing a lot of testing on it. We just finished a complete class overhaul, and we didn't change the skills so much as do a massive tuning pass and everything. We talked about every skill, what its original intent was, what players are doing with it, or what they're not doing with it, as in we reviewed all the underused use skills it well. We tried to bring a lot of things up to be either better for the fantasy or simply more useful for what players are already doing. And in many cases, we feel like the design was solid, but the numbers were off. And it's really good. Like, we do the best math we can in a spreadsheet and with our own testing. Once millions of players play something, you always, when you can see data on a scale like that, you learn so much. And so, we've been wanting to do this for a while. Now we've done it. It takes a long time to do a complete, thorough math pass and then a massive testing pass, and that's what we're in the middle of right now.
Okay, typical last question. When is beta coming?
I don't think we have anything to announce on that. The typical Blizzard answer.
Soon? TM? Okay. Well, thank you, Kevin, for the interview. It was a pleasure again. See you next BlizzCon, perhaps?
Yeah, thanks for coming.
All right. Thanks. Awesome.